everyone, it's Shell from Scrap Secrets and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is part of the Team Tiny September 2022 hop, and our challenge for this month was to use this color palette to create a card. Here's the card that I created, so I'll walk you through how I made it and I'll talk a little bit about Team Tiny and about the hop as we go through the video. So to start off, I'm going to be using this Hero Arts My Monthly Hero Kit. It is probably about a year or two old, and it is a layering stamp set, which I love layering stamp sets. So I'm stamping onto some Canson XL watercolor paper with some Distress Oxide colors. So the first one I'm going to use is Spun Sugar. Because this is Distress Oxide, it's not the best for stamping, so I do stamp it a couple times, and I don't get a really solid image, which is totally fine because I wanted some texture to the background. I did dry that layer before I went on to the next layer, which is going to be Kitsch Flamingo, and then I'm going to go in with Shaded Lilac, which I know is not part of the color palette, but I thought that it looked really nice with these colors. So I'm going to stamp the Kitsch Flamingo, then the Shaded Lilac, and then we're going to move on to the Rays, which will be that yellowy orange that was in the color palette. And we're going to stamp down the Rays and the sun with both dried Marigold and Fossilized Amber. So while I'm doing that, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Team Tiny and our hop. So Team Tiny is a Facebook group that is made up of content creators on YouTube that have less than 1,000 subscribers who are actively trying to grow our channels. We come together once a month with a hop, and it has a theme, and there's usually about 15 people that participate. It is a hashtag driven hop, so make sure you click in the hashtag in the video title. Some people will also have it in their description, but if you want to type it in the search bar, it's hashtag Team Tiny September 2022 hop, and you'll get everybody's videos who are participating in this month's hop. So for this month, the theme was using this color palette to create a card, and it was definitely a challenge for me. When I looked at the color palette online, I looked at it on my iPad, it looked a little bit more pink, and when I looked at it today when I was doing the voiceover, it looked a little bit more mauve in that second one. So I probably could have gone in with some Victorian velvet, but I did the best that I could. And you don't have to do, when you do challenges like this, you don't have to have the exact colors. Just pick something that represents it or that is as close to it as you possibly have. You do the best that you can, and let me know in the comments below if you think that I hit the colors. I mean, I probably was a little bit off, but I tried my best to pick colors that matched the 5 colors that were on that sketch. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to cut out some clouds. This die is also from the Hero Arts kit. So I'm going to run it through my Bitty Buzzcutter with a scrap of that same watercolor paper, and I'm going to be able to get 2.5 sets of clouds from this. I'm going to ink them up depending on where they're going to go in the sky. And at this point, I still thought that I was going to have the word hope, which is also a die from this stamp set or this kit. I thought I was going to use the word hope on the front of this. So I'm going in and adding a little bit of pink to the background just to kind of fill in some of those white spaces and to make the sky look a little bit more cohesive, because it looks like there's just clouds, a spot, a sun, and then nothing at the bottom. So I wanted to fill in those spots. And this is where you do as I say and not as I do, because if you see, I started smudging a little bit of that Shaded Lilac with the Spun Sugar because it wasn't dry. Make sure you dry your layers in between stamps. It'll also help give you crisper stamps. If you're doing layering, it will allow the first color to dry so that the second color can it doesn't blend into each other unless that's the look that you're going for. So I picked 3 different spots for the clouds. I'm actually going to end up using this one in a different spot because I was trying to cover up some of the smudges of the purple. But I used Spun Sugar and Kitsch Flamingo to color this cloud set in, and I thought that's where it was going to go. That's not where it ends up. I go back in and add a little bit of Kitsch Flamingo around the sun because I thought it was a little bit too light there. And then I'm going to also go back in and add Shaded Lilac. And again, if I was to do this over again, I would not go in with as heavy of a hand as I do, as you'll see in a minute. I went in with way too heavy on the left-hand side. I didn't start off my paper and it's really, really bright. So I just went back in with a little bit of Kitsch Flamingo to tone it down a little bit. And then I'm also going to bring that Shaded Lilac up to the top and around the sides just for a little bit of more continuity. I didn't think there was enough purple or the Shaded Lilac in the sky. So I'm going to go back and forth until I'm happy with the blends on it. And then I'm going to go to the bottom underneath the sun and go ahead and add in a little bit of fossilized amber as well as dried marigold. And just a side note, dried marigold, why have I never used that before? It's one of my new favorite colors. I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely love it. I think it's such a pretty shade of like a peachy orange. It's real, real pretty for sunsets and skies. So I'm going in and adding more of that fossilized amber and the dried marigold, and then I'm going to do that last cloud in those two colors. Now this is where I still think I'm going to put the hope on this panel and not do a top panel. So I shouldn't have glued these clouds down until the very end, until I saw what it looked like, but that's not where my mind was at this point. I was thinking that the hope was going to go on there and was going to look okay. It ends up being a little bit too busy, which you'll see in a minute. So I end up gluing those three clouds down. I did move the full cloud down to the middle, added a little bit of Shaded Lilac in it just to kind of hide some of those smudge marks. And then I used that light pink one at the top. I probably could have added a little bit of the Shaded Lilac to that one as well. And then I'm going to cut off the excess of that cloud, as well as there was kind of little fuzzies at the bottom of the card panel. And if I didn't already tell you guys, this card front measures 4 by 5.25. So now I'm taking another piece of scrap Canson XL watercolor paper and going in with the two colors of green that I picked. And I picked Bundled Sage and Iced Spruce to represent the greens that were in the color palette. Going back and forth with the two brushes just to blend out the whole entire thing and to make sure there's no harsh lines. And later on, I'm going to realize those two colors look way too similar to each other, and I will go back and add a lot more of the Iced Spruce to make it look a lot different, so you can see that there's two colors. So I'm also running this through my Bitty Buzzcutter, and I've never used this die before, so I wasn't sure exactly how it cut out. But there is a bubble piece that goes around it because this will just cut out the little die pieces. I did use the bubble piece because I wanted the whole word to be cut out. You could actually chop off the left-hand side in front of the H and make it kind of a square and put that on the front of your card. But I wanted it to be more of a sentiment rather than a sentiment strip, if that makes sense. So I'm taping this die into place because I don't want it to shift at all. When you are using anything that was inked up with distress inks or distress oxides, washi tape does not like to stick to it, so I always use brand new pieces when I go ahead and do this. So I used new pieces, held that down into place, popped it out of the backer piece, and then popped out all of the middle pieces. And once those are all done, I'm going to take it over to the background panel that I created. And this is where I'm looking at it. And I think, first of all, the greens look way too similar. I need to add a little bit. So I bring back in my We Are Memory Keepers board, and I add more of that Iced Spruce to the bottom. And I add just a tiny bit of Bundled Sage just to make it blend together nicer in the middle. So then now you can really see the two different shades of green in this. Bring it back over to the front because I thought maybe that's what was wrong. And I'm like, nope, it's way too busy. So I'm either going to go to plan B, C, whichever one it is. This die is also included in the kit. And I thought, wouldn't it be really cool to have a front panel with this die cut out of it so that you could see to the background and then have the hope over top of that. Since it's just basically a colored background, there's not much to it, the hope will stand out on it versus it being too busy on that background piece. So this piece of watercolor paper measures 4 by 5.5, and I scored at 5.25. So it's the same height as the other piece. Oh, I'm just taking the colors of Distress Oxide and going over the panel. I kind of measured out where things were on that background piece to make sure that when I cut out the middle, it's going to be seamless. It's going to look like all one piece, because I didn't want to have yellow in one spot and then purple on the top right next to each other and just, and not have it look cohesive. So I'm adding the piece back up there to see where I need to add a little bit more purple and the light pink. One of the things that I will tell you is that the score mark on this was pretty thick. So when I folded it over, because this is thicker cardstock, it's the watercolor paper, so it's a little bit thicker, and it was a little bit short. So what I did was I put it back into my scoreboard, and then I think it was just like 1/8 of an inch. I scored closer to the 5.5-inch side. I scored, so it makes a little lip on it, and it actually makes on them like a little hinge, which you'll see in a minute because this may not make sense. And it allows the card to go all the way down to the bottom, but it also makes it a little bit easier to open. So once I'm happy with the color blend, I'm going to put the hope on, make sure it looks okay. And then I'm going to take that cloud piece and do the same thing, tape it down into place, and I'm going to run that through my Cut-A-Bug. The Bitty Buzzcutter is not wide enough to cut this panel out. So once I've cut that out, I will take out the middle fallout piece, and then we're going to start lining things up, and you'll be able to see that the background looks pretty similar to the front piece looks pretty similar to the background piece. I feel like I didn't do too bad with the colors. So now you're going to see here, I'm going to point it out. See, there's that little lip at the top. So you're going to want to put glue on the right-hand side of that first score mark. You're going to want to put that piece down and then put the base piece inside of it and then fold that over. So it's going to be an interactive kind of fun fold card, because you're going to be able to lift the front flap up. Now, if I had to do this over, I would do two things right here differently. I would have moved that bottom left-hand cloud down up more towards the sun so that you could see it through the opening. And I also would have put it on a side folding card base. I end up cutting the card base wrong and putting it on a top folding one, so you're going to open it a couple times on the top. So I'm now gluing the hope word into place. I just made sure that there was no glue on the top of the O or the bottom where it was overlapping the opening. And since the card front is 4.25 by 4 by 5.25 inches, that top that hangs over is going to be fine. It'll still fit into an envelope. So now I'm using that same Honeybee Be Creative glue to put glue on the back of the two panels, and I'm attaching it to a top folding card base. And the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take a Spectrum Noir pen and put a little bit of glitter on the sun and on the rays. So that finishes the card. I hope that you guys are enjoying this hop. Hopefully you have found some new creators that you can follow and saw some projects that give you some inspiration. Oh, here are some pictures of the cards. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have comments or questions, please feel free to leave them below, and I'll see you guys again real soon in another video.